Okay, so in the last video we talked more about parliamentary procedure basics. This go-round is where we're going to talk about the table of motions and what can be done with each ability. So this is what you need to know about each motion that we talk about. The ranking of the motions. So we're going to work from top to bottom. So those that we talk about first are the highest ranking motions, and then the very last one that we talk about, which is actually the main motion, is going to be the lowest ranking motion. So this basically just means it puts them in order of precedence. If there's a motion on the table that is not a main motion, you have to handle that first before you can handle the main motion. You have to know if each motion is debatable or can be discussed. Okay, so if it says that yes, it is debatable, it can be discussed. You have to know if it's amendable, so can you change it? You have to know what type of vote is required. So simple majority, 2/3 majority. Some of the motions actually do not require any vote, so you will have to know that as well. You have to know whether a second is required, and can it be reconsidered. That'll either be a yes, a no, or there's some special requirement with it. Alright, so privileged motions. These are the highest ranking and generally take precedence over pretty much anything else. They don't relate to pending business, but they are important. So the first one we're going to talk about, and actually the one that takes precedence over everything else, is the motion to adjourn. And the motion to adjourn means to end the meeting. So, second is required. It is not debatable. It is not amendable. You either want to end the meeting or you don't. It cannot be reconsidered, and a simple majority is required to pass the motion. Recess. This is a motion that would indicate that you want to take a break from the meeting. It does require a second. It is not debatable. It is amendable. So you can say, I want to take a recess now. And someone might say, I move to amend that we take a recess in 5 minutes. Cannot be reconsidered, and it does require a simple majority vote. Alright, question of privilege. So this handles matters of comfort. Okay, so this is where your sentinel would step in. So if someone says, oh, it's too hot in here, or, oh, it's too cold in here, something like that, that would be a question of privilege. Does not require a second, not debatable, not amendable, cannot be reconsidered, does not require any vote. You're either comfortable or you're not. So we need to get it fixed if you're not. Alright, the next group of motions are subsidiary motions, and these are applied to other motions to assist in handling business in an orderly manner. Okay, so these are going to act on other motions that are before the group at the time. So the first one is to lay on the table. Okay, and this would put aside an item of business to handle more important business. So if you lay a motion on the table, you're basically saying, we're going to pick this up in our next meeting. Okay. This really enables a group to delay a motion, and that allows members to attend to more urgent business. Right? You might have a motion that's on the table right now that might affect your plans 3 months from now, but there's another motion that you need to talk about, and that's going to affect your plans 1 month from now. You probably want to handle the one that's going to affect your plans 1 month from now sooner than you want to worry about a motion that's going to affect something 3 months from now. It also allows members additional time to consider the motion that you're going to lay on the table. Does require a second. It is not debatable. It is not amendable. Cannot be reconsidered, and it's a simple majority vote. Alright, previous question. Previous question stops all debate on a motion or a series of pending questions. And previous question basically means we're going to stop debate right now and we're going to go ahead and vote. So a member calls for previous question when the motion on the floor has been discussed and no new ideas are being presented. Does require a second. It is not debatable. It is not amendable. It can be reconsidered, but only before it is voted on. And it does require a 2/3 majority vote. Reason for that is if you're going to stop discussion is huge in Parli Pro. So if you're going to stop that, you need to make sure that at least 67% of your membership is good with stopping discussion. Alright, referring to a committee. So this places a motion or business into the hands of a small group to report, recommend, and then they can act on it, sometimes they don't. And it really is meant to secure more detailed information to the motion by assigning a group of members to do the following 3 things. One is to investigate and report the facts. Second is to investigate and make a formal recommendation on the motion. And then the third thing is to investigate and act for the group. So those are the 3 things that they can do. They don't always do all 3. Sometimes they do all 3. Sometimes they just investigate and come back and report at the next meeting. Sometimes they investigate and they can come back and make a recommendation and say, look, we've looked at the facts. This is our recommendation based on what we found. And sometimes the assembly says, look, you just handle it. You investigate, you figure out what we should do, and go ahead and act on it. The motion to refer a motion to a committee must include the following things. All right, first is the number on the committee and how they are appointed. You also have to specify their powers, what can they do, and when they're going to report back. Does require a second. It is debatable. It is amendable. It can be reconsidered, and it is a simple majority vote. Amend. So this is basically just a fancy word for changing a motion. So changing a motion, or changing the intent of a motion, and you can do that in 3 ways. One is adding words, one is striking out words or removing words, or you can substitute words. It does require a second. It is debatable. It is amendable. It can be reconsidered, and a simple majority vote is required. Extending or limiting debate. So this allows a member to limit or extend debate to a specified time frame. Like, hey, we're only going to talk about this motion for 5 minutes. That's all we got. Ready, go. It does require a second. It is not debatable. It is amendable. It can be reconsidered. And again, because you're limiting discussion and you're putting a time frame on it, it does require a 2/3 majority vote. All right, incidental motions. So these usually accompany or arise out of other parliamentary abilities and needs. So incidental motions are like those little things that pop up that you have to handle. Incidentals have no ranking, cannot be assigned in order of precedence other than the order of precedence of the motion they arise out of. So if they arise out of a main motion, they take lower precedence than a motion to amend something. So appeal. This ensures a majority agrees with the ruling of the chair. So an appeal can actually change the decision of the chair if enough people vote for it. It does require a second. It is debatable. It is not amendable. You either agree or you don't. You know, you can't say, I agree with the chair, but only if he turns around 3 times. It doesn't quite work that way. It can be reconsidered. Simple majority vote is required. Point of order. This enforces the rules and corrects any parliamentary mistakes or errors. It avoids breaking parliamentary procedure rules. It can be called any time during a business meeting. And this is when your parliamentarian steps up and says, yes, that was a parliamentary mistake, or no, it wasn't. Does not require a second. It is not debatable. It is not amendable. It cannot be reconsidered. And there's no vote required. If you call for a point of order, you just say, I rise to a point of order. Parliamentarian says, yes, there was a mistake, or no, there wasn't, and we move on. Motion to suspend the rules. So this would do something ordinarily against the rules of the organization. You're kind of throwing the rule book out the window, at least temporarily. This would allow the assembly to do something it needs to do that it cannot do without suspending the rules. So if you say, you know, well, we're only talking about fundraising at this meeting, you could suspend the rule and say, I have a community service issue I want to talk about. I move to suspend the rule until we have cleared that up. Something along those lines. It does require a second. It is not debatable. It is not amendable. It cannot be reconsidered. And because you're limiting the rights of a member and you're throwing the rule book out the window, it does require a 2/3 majority. I apologize for the jingling in the background. That is my dogs. So withdraw a motion. To withdraw a motion basically just saves time on an unpopular and unneeded motion. Basically, it's just taking it away. It does not require a second. I'm sorry. It is not debatable. It is not amendable. It cannot be reconsidered. Typically there is no vote on this one. Sometimes there is, but we're just going to go with usually none. Division of the House. So this calls for a counted vote. Okay, so you're either going to use a standing vote or vote by show of hands, something like that. So you call for a voice vote and the decision is unclear. That's when you would call for division of the House, and you would say, we need a counted vote here. It does require a revote on an inconclusive vote until the chairperson has stated the question on another motion. So until the chairperson has a clear decision on who got the vote, the division of the House stands. It does not require a second. It is not debatable. It is not amendable. It cannot be reconsidered. And there is no vote required on a division of the House. You just go ahead and you re-vote on the motion. Alright, unclassified motions. So these are applied to motions that have already been dealt with by the Assembly. And it brings a motion back before the Assembly. So to take from the table, so we just talked about lay on the table. So if you're taking back from the table, you're bringing an item from the table that has been set aside. It does require a second. It is not debatable. It's not amendable. Cannot be reconsidered. And is a simple majority vote. Reconsidering a motion. This brings a motion back to the floor for more debate, more consideration in the same session. Okay? Must be made by a member on the prevailing side, so on the side of the majority here. Second is required. Sometimes it's debatable, because you can debate whether or not you want to reconsider the motion, but for the most part, it isn't. Most people are going to say either yes, let's consider it, or no, let's not. It is not amendable. It can only be reconsidered if it receives a negative vote. And the vote that is required is the simple majority. Alright, to rescind a motion. So this would undo something that has been voted on prior to actions taking place. It does require a second. It is debatable. It is amendable. Again, can only be reconsidered if there's a negative vote involved. And the vote required is a 2/3 majority. Alright, and the main motion. The main motion introduces new business, a new item of business. It takes precedence over nothing. So everything else has to be taken care of before you're talking about new business. Main motions are the lowest ranking. They may only be made when nothing else is pending. You can only have one main motion on the floor at a time, and it presents an idea, an opinion, an action, anything like that, for consideration by the group. It does require a second. It is debatable. It is fully amendable. It can certainly be reconsidered, and the vote required is a simple majority. That is it. That is the last motion we're going to talk about. I know we covered more in this one than we did in Animal 1. I do appreciate you sticking with it. I know Parley Pro can be a little bit tedious, perhaps. But of course, let me know if you have any questions. Thanks so much.